we are going to be starting with today's masterclass webinar. And this webinar will be very important because you will be learning the tricks of the trade, how to crack the FP&A leadership-based interviews, and who better than two stalwarts joining us. Subhro Bhattacharya, who's donning a new look this season, as we can also see it on his LinkedIn profile. He's a director at KPMG in India, having over 16 years of illustrious, varied international public accounting and industry experience altogether in compliance, audit, deals, SOX 404, financial reporting and process, but an apt person to help you out, figure out the various kinds of leadership styles and how can you crack the interview, as well as we have Gagan Arora, who's been into management consultancy over the past years and is a director at KPMG in India. So two apt leaders, two masters also from the FP&A master camp that we are having. I'll let both of you spearhead the conversation. Really looking forward to getting insights on how we can essentially crack the FP&A leadership style interviews. Looking forward to knowing about the styles, various leadership styles, and the STAR method particularly. I'm very curious to attend it for that. So over to both of you. I'll let both of you spearhead the conversation.
Thanks, Nirja. How are you?
I'm doing well, and even better after looking at your your persona altogether. And we were missing your witty repartees, I think.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Good evening to all of you joining from all over the country, I presume. Hopefully some from overseas also. So welcome to. It's a Friday evening. And I know it takes a lot to get on to these webinars, so we appreciate your time and you joining us today. So, like Nirja said, we're joined by Gagan and myself are your hosts for the evening today, and we'll try and make this as entertaining as we can within the realms of being a functional FPA interviewing session. So what we'll do is I'll just share my screen. So what we're going to do is, firstly, we're just going to give you a bit of an, flavor as to what happens in what is all, is it really that difficult? Some methods we use. You'll get to know more of that in the course. And then I'll start off with that. And then Gagan will take you through the FP&A paradigm and what does that interviewing techniques, what does it mean from an FP&A perspective? And then I will just close it off with a couple of trajectories of careers in FP&A and the various levels which go through. So without further ado, this is what we have on the agenda. Techniques of good leadership interviews. So we'll go through that. After that, Gagan's going to take over and take you through overview on FP&A, budgeting, forecasting, and tips to ace the FP&A leadership interviews. And then we'll get on to leadership questions, etc., and some other things around your FP&A track. So, as you move up the corporate ladder, Gagan and me have also moved up over the years. And so one thing which slowly the corporates at the high end start looking at is basically beyond your technical. So technical is a given. So you have to be a functional expert at something, whether it be technical accounting myself or FP&A and analysis and analytics like Gagan is. And then, you can do various things with your career. You want to move within KPMG or not. But I think what the core thing is, beyond that, what do you offer to the firm effectively? And when I talk about just not KPMG, this is big corporates as well as other financial institutions. It goes beyond just pure technical know-how. So we'll just touch upon a few different types of leadership styles which are assessed as, and in a diverse population, you'll find a lot of people in all these four buckets. Not saying anything is right or wrong. However, you build your teams according to your strength, you play to your strengths, and various corporations and consulting firms have a preference to a certain type of leadership as you grow through the ranks. So the first one is autocratic leadership, as the word suggests. This is the modern day Hitler, if I may just say that. So these are people who are basically my way or the highway. They know what outcome they're after. They are very aligned. They know what they want. They want their team to follow them in that particular way. They are generally not leaders who bring people on the journey. However, these people are very efficient decision makers, and most of the time they are correct as well. But in the modern day and age, such autocratic leadership is not seen in a very good in a very good light in corporations. So the next one is democratic. So these are the people as the people who listen to their team. They listen to different views in the team. They take you on the journey. They take employees on the journey. They will ask you, you ask them a question. What do you think? So that sort of leadership where they encourage participation from the group, but in the end, after listening to everything, it will be an informed decision which they take. So that is a democratic leadership, and this is a sort of leadership which is promoted in various corporations, and it is seen in a very good light that you're a people person and you take people along. Then is laissez-faire. So laissez-faire is basically the leader who just leaves everything to the people. So the people take the decisions, they build their projects, they do everything which is there. And then the leader is effectively just sitting in the background, just watching, observing them, operate, and at a very high level. So laissez-faire is operational in many European countries, etc. However, there's some downsides with this is sometimes organizational objectives are not met because people can do what they want, but if it's not tied into the strategy of what the organization wants to do, it goes all over the place. So that is one type of leadership. And the last one is benevolent leadership, which is basically like a daddy or a mummy in the organization taking you along. Well, these have benefits. People stick to such people very closely. However, in large mature organizations, this is not really seen when it's very complex and people are in a professional environment. So these are different types of leadership skills, and most of the people who are here on this webinar today are experienced people. You probably identify with one of these styles for yourself, and as you grow up through the ladder, you should just be conscious of what is your leadership style, because that's going to come to the interview. So point of view of an interviewer. So it's basically at this time we wanted to just say that how would you BEI is a framework, behavioral event interview. So these are things where as you go through the ranks and you grow higher, it's all about the interviews become what have you experienced. So it's no longer the graduate interviews, your first chartered accountant, first job, or some MBA and your first job to crack the first job. It's no longer that. It's expected you've done all that. So people are looking more at, when I interview people at a senior manager level, for example, I will try and get down to what do they do. So what are their experience during, so you have when you do these interviews, you should bring out during my time as a manager for whatever. So bring through, and we'll teach you a little bit of a technique we use, which is what Nirja was saying, the STAR technique. But these are things which you relate to the past. So I used my knowledge of financial planning and accounting to do something. By the end of the project, my team was able to do something. So very relevant, factual things, but based on past behaviors related to an event which you're being interviewed on. So that's called a point of view of an interview. It comes through that the person's actually got the experience, is what we're trying to look for. So the techniques to ace BEI leadership interviews, this is one of the methods. So this is called the STAR method. Many of you may have heard of it. It's a global method which is used by a lot of firms, consulting firms, accounting firms, corporates. HR is looking for you. This is how you make real impact. This is when you bring the conversation together. So if Subhro were to ask you a question as to if you had a very tough conversation with an employee and he had to give a very, she or he is working very hard on a project, but you have to give them a, sad news that maybe they didn't make the promotion. So how do you do it? So effectively, it's called the STAR principle. The first is, what's the situation? So you explain the situation and share the important details. So it has to be very factual. So you've got to really go down and just nail the facts. You should always draw in this give an example. So just don't say that you made an error somewhere. Bring it down to which was the error, where was the error. And this STAR method is just not for interviewing. Any conversations you have with your peers, it's always a very good method, way to have any conversation. So after that, the T stands for task. So explain the task which is faced by you. So you don't have to say, in that situation, why am I doing what I'm doing? So situation, then the task. Why are you doing what you're doing? So, if it relates to you being the performance manager of that person, you lay it out. So that's how you, when you get interviewed, the interviewer question, how did you manage a difficult situation? You have to explain the situation, what the situation was, the facts, then what were you tasked with doing as part of that situation. The A stands for action. So this is very important, is elaborate the action or the steps which were taken by you as part of that. So what did you do? In the interview is basically for you. So it's not about the we, it's about the you. So I did this. So you have to be very specific. And then R is result, where you talk about the final outcome. So you round it up, and then, that's how you use. So situation, task, action, result. So this is the method which is used for a lot of leadership interviewing. And when you interview for jobs, please do remember this. This is a great method to follow for any interviews you do. So so preparation is, of course, key to all this. So the real situations, tell me about a situation when you got involved in a project with little knowledge or pure knowledge, your learnings, what was at stake, your growth, how did you come out stronger from that situation, achievements, what was the outcome, and approach, how did you handle the situation differently if you had the situation going forward. So these are sort of questions which are asked, and we will explain this further and deep dive into them when we teach this course around business partnering and leadership interviewing. Over to you, Gagan.
So good evening, everyone. I'm just going to cover the section on overview on FP&A. So everyone talking about, so what is important? So Subhro has covered what should be your interview style and how you should be covering the STAR approach, where everything has to be outcome oriented. So what you have done, how you've done, and what was the ultimate outcome of it. So now we will focus on more on what, from an FP&A perspective, from what you should be knowing and what is expected of you if you sit in an interview as a leadership interview with an FP&A. What is the expectation from you? So I'll talk about a little bit on the business priorities of today. So if you look at the companies are focusing on, how to grow the business, how to manage the risk, how to manage the regulatory complexity, and how to enhance the customer experience, how to use technology to deliver results faster. For example, within FP&A, we will go through some tools, etc., which are more supportive, what you should also know about. So it's about knowing the environment, the microeconomic factors which are impacting the overall business, because FP&A is very different from a typical finance role, and it's more of a strategic role where you are supporting and running with the CEOs, with the CFOs, and with the key stakeholders hand in hand, and a very important piece where you are supporting them in decision making. So what is FP&A? So FP&A, what does it involve? It involves from financial planning to budgeting to forecasting to reporting, and so you need to know all these areas in a very detailed manner. The expectation, if you're going for a leadership level interview, is not just about knowing the differences between planning and budgeting and forecasting. It's about digging deeper. It's about knowing what are the scenarios, how to build the scenarios, how to do the what if analysis, what are the key drivers, what are the types of budgets, what are the types of KPIs you should be choosing for reporting, what is important for the business, and this should be in line with the strategic priorities of the business. So a KPI cannot be prepared in a report which is not making sense from a strategic priority point of view. For example, if the business is expanding to a new territory, or you are planning to launch a new product, then if your KPIs are not linked to that, if they're not talking about the same thing, it will not make any sense, or it will not help the organization move in the right direction. So before we go in for the interviews, it's important to understand, it's important to read about, look at the website, look at the market environment, what the business is, and what you should be knowing from again, the macro and microeconomic factors which are impacting that business. Who are the key, stakeholders in the business, whether there are any investments coming from external parties, if what are the competitors of that business and what is the growth expectation. You should be reading through a lot of media reports and other reports which talks about what is the future of that business within, for example, India or globally. What is the expansion? What is happening with the peer groups, etc. So moving on to how is finance and accounting and FP&A very different. So if you look at, as we were talking about, it's a very strategic role. It's versus a transactional role, what you would ideally do in any other parts of finance. So earlier finance was a backend function which was used, which was a necessity for the organization to present the numbers, but it has gained an importance and it has moved towards a strategic role now where it runs hand in hand with the business stakeholders. If we talk about the sales head or marketing head or any other department, everybody has to get a sign off from a finance function, and the FP&A team is the front runner for that. So although we have a lot of teams within finance, it will be treasury, tax, it will be other departments who are looking at the regular day-to-day working on accounts receivables, payables, etc. So there will be a lot of transactional versus strategic work in those is, and what if we compare it with an FP&A role is very different. So FP&A would be like 80% to 90% strategic and 10% transactional, with coming in of a lot of technologies which are supporting the FP&A functions right now. It's more of relationship based versus the deliverable based. It's not about, I have to do a month-end activity. I have to close my ledger. I have to present my numbers to XYZ, or I have to submit and prepare my management accounts. It starts beyond that, where you start analyzing the management accounts, where you start discussing with the stakeholders, okay, this is my performance, this is my budget, where do we stand and why there was a variance, what could be changed in future so that we don't have a similar situation what we are facing right now, or if we are doing something better, then what else we can do to ensure that we continue to make the things better in future as well. It's about bringing all the departments within the organization, whether it's support departments like admin or HR, etc., or the front runners, sales, marketing, all of them coming together and understanding, building relationship as a business partner with them, working with them to prepare business case. If we are doing a product launch, for example, going into the new market, or investing into a totally different kind of a product, doing a research and development on a product. So a relationship, a business partnering role is where the focus is within the FP&A department versus comparing it to the standard finance other departments. Again, interdependent versus discrete. If we talk about it's again interdependent. All our budgets, all our reporting is done across the organization. It is not something which is hidden. It's all open. Apple to apple comparisons are made and presented to various stakeholders. It's important to have everybody on the same comparison chart. For example, we cannot compare one region or one product's performance versus another regional product performance without having the similar KPIs, the similar drivers to understand if one region is performing better than the other, what has been the reason behind that. So it has to be very, very clear by that. Okay, so what is the FP&A framework? So if you look at the top, it starts from the mission and vision. What is your mission and vision of the company? So it's very important to read about it, understand that wherever we are going for an interview, knowing in detail what is the vision of that company, what is the strategy. We'll get all this information online. We'll get into their annual statements. We'll read the news across in the media. And then if you see the supporting pillar for this is FP&A. So you'll have to be able to link through the questions which will come to you by a CFO or a CEO. You will be presented a case study, for example, and say, given a challenge which they would be ideally facing in the current economic environment, and they will try to find an answer through you as well, and try to see how smartly you can give them an answer for their problems which they are already facing, and how you are different from the people who are already in the organization and they know the business in and out. What outside perspective you can bring in. So you have to think from that perspective as well. be ready with all the case studies and scenarios what could come through to you. You'll have to be knowing about the key differences between the planning, budgeting, and forecasting. If you look at the pillars, we have three important pillars within FP&A. One is planning, budgeting, forecasting, and these are the regular cycles. So planning would ideally mean the 5-year plan, and the long range plan, which we're talking about 3 to 5 years. What is the outlook of 3 to 5 years where they want to be? And if you know about the company, if you've read well about the company, you are able to take the discussion and link your experience with, where they want to go and bridge that gap, which makes them more comfortable while you are in the interview. Budgets are done for a shorter period, which is for a year down the line, where what is the annual budget and where they will stand at the end of the year. And forecasting would be a regular forecast, which is like a fixed forecast of 2 months and 10 months, or 5 and 7 and 9 and 3, for example, or it could be a rolling forecast or monthly forecast. So you should be able to, look at their short-term goals, long-term goals, and be able to relate them in the discussion, so that they understand that you may be very good at Excel or maybe very good at model building, which is key requirement of this role. But then beyond that, you are able to, think through towards the mission and vision and the strategy of the company and link all this through. Then it will help you sail through the interviews. Reporting and analysis, very important part of our FP&A function, where month-end reporting, annual reporting, management reporting is of paramount importance. Again, you have to link your experience with how you would have developed any dashboards or reports in your past experience. If you are not directly working within an FP&A department, but any other finance department and wanting to move into FP&A, you can link through your reporting from a AP point of view, or other reports which you have been preparing regularly, AR, etc., treasury reports, other reports, and project a way that how you will be able to compare and show it as a waterfall or a proper dashboard where the variances can be looked at, and what are the key KPIs again for analysis which should be looked at. Then another pillar which is relatively new and very important, which is dimensional profitability. This talks about you should be able to break their revenues into multiple slicing and dicing, and say, this geography, this region, this SKU, this product, how certain fixed costs can be allocated to that, or certain direct costs are allocated to that. For example, if you have a product being sold in a supermarket, and so there is some kind of cost involved even to put those into the shelf. So if the product has been kept in the front area or at the back area, so where the customer will come in and they will have more visibility. So what kind of expense there is to put a product as the people enter into the supermarket, and vis-a-vis comparing to some product which has been kept on in the aisle at the behind. So what are the differences? What are the costs involved in that, and how the exact cost can be achieved of that particular product? In the middle, you see iterative technologies, which we're talking about. There are a lot of technologies to support FP&A, SAP, BBC, IBM, Team One. If you have heard about Cognos, Hyperion, Oracle, and some of the more newer tools or cloud-based tools which are coming up, like Anaplan, Board International. We'll look at that in a little bit future slides. But this is giving an overview of how FP&A you should be able to link it through. You should be able to link your experience in technology and otherwise through to the company where you're interviewing for. Okay, so leading practices, some of the things which again you should be knowing them in and out, because this is a leadership interview which we're talking about, which is going to be above manager level at least. So towards the team lead, towards the FP&A lead, towards the manager of the FP&A team, you should be knowing about all these terminologies. What is agile budgeting? What is scenario planning? What is rolling forecast? What is continuous predictive model method? So when we talk about these, again, rolling forecast is your 12 months rolling picture of the next 12 months, wherever you stand today. So you might be doing it. Some companies prefer to do it every quarter. Some of the companies prefer to do it every month to get a next 12 months picture without restricting themselves to the financial year. Standardized reporting formats and sources. Again, this is a very important part where there's a standard report for all the regions and all the departments, so that the senior stakeholders who are the CEOs, investors, etc., are able to compare them, are able to look at the KPIs in a format which are much easier to help them make decisions. And these are not just the numbers, these are able to give you some valuable insights where key decisions are made based on those. And then similarly, higher data quality, evaluating and managing the risk. So these are all leading practices, and you should be able to talk about these. What is scenario planning? Again, scenario is multiple various scenarios which you are comparing, whether you should enter a new market, new product. If you do some kind of a capital investment, for example, if it's a capital intensive company like a telecom, you will be investing into a lot of towers and networks initially, and then getting your revenues through mobile operations and network operations at a later stage. So initial investment is required, but you have to again prepare the backup working for that, whether it's a profitable business or when it's going to pay you back, what is the payback time. So multiple scenarios are prepared on multiple bases, but you should be able to link with your current experience wherever you're working and kind of show them, you worked in here, and you worked in 10 different you had multiple options, but why you went for one options out of the multiple options you had in hand. Agile budgeting, we mean by is like it should be very flexible to amend, and because in the budgets we get a lot of challenges even at the last moment, so we have to, by the senior management with the senior stakeholders, that's why we have at least 2 to 3 revisions of budgets being submitted, and the final one goes into the system. So between that, this is the process about 2 to 3 months, which it takes. Ideally, this is the leading practice timeline, but although some companies are, beyond that, around 5 to 6 months, but ideally, the leading practice is to keep it between 2 to 3 months. So macro and micro economic factors, again, some of the ideas which you can talk about while you are in the interviews from a functional expert point of view. If you are asked what are the external factors or a broader factors which affect the planning process, you can talk about some market forces, external environment, for example, currency fluctuations or political fluctuations, what's happening in Ukraine right now, the impact of that on the oil prices, etc. Then customer preferences. Earlier, people preferred some different kind of product, but now the changes are coming in. So, for example, in mobile market, Apple is number one, and Samsung is also, at that par. So what are the preference? Where if you are into something similar, providing services for the mobile company, then you have to look at the customer preferences where customers are trying to move. Disruptive business models, when we talk about new technologies coming in, new businesses coming in. For example, again, DVD business was there earlier. Now it's all online business. Even people have stopped going to cinemas after COVID. People prefer to watch on Amazon, Netflix, etc. So the modern business model is being disrupted. So you have to look at all these factors. Technology advances, as we're talking about RPA, bots, Alexas, and all those things coming in. We have to be wary about all that. Regulatory dynamics, what is happening, the law of the land, and what are the changes happening, whether you can export or there are more taxes on export and import, for example. So overall business environment from a macro and factors point of view, and then micro factors would be some examples of like skill shortage. You don't have right set of people, or you can look at product complexity. Recently, after COVID, there is a shortage of microchips, as we see, which goes into a lot of car manufacturing and all that. So there's a lot of dependency from that point of view. So again, it will depend upon the individual company you're interviewing for, but you should be able to understand broadly what are the macro factors and micro factors impacting their business, and you can kind of link with your conversation and talk to them about it. So some of the techniques and tools, what is there, what was used in the past, what is used now, and what is leading. So there was traditional budgeting in the past. When we look at, we should be able to clearly explain that this was more from, traditional budgeting. You have a corporate head office, as you see on the left picture. It decides on its own that this should be my budget, and my business A, B, and C situated in north, south, and east will give me revenues of whatever they were making now based on their historical performance. They should be doing plus 10%, 20%, etc. So that's purely traditional budget, which is like a top down decision, is centralized, and whatever the senior management has decided and said is done, and that's what everybody should be doing. Whereas when you compare from what when we move towards a zero-based budgeting and a driver-based budgeting thought process, it moves from a contribution planning towards the contribution planning process, where we say it's a two-way thing. Okay, I have businesses in north, west, and south. Now all the businesses, let's come together, let's sit together, give me your budget, what do you think, what is right for you, and what is good, what you can do, but base it to some standard drivers which are going to drive your revenues, etc., so that it's clear where is the gap. For example, we'll look at some drivers as well, some illustrations after this. But for example, if you have to go for a revenue, there's a price and quantity involved in that. So was it because we were selling it for a higher price, or we sold less quantities and that's why our revenue is less? So we really need to know that lower level of details and understanding on towards that. So some of the drivers which come here, if you see, there's some controllable and non-controllable drivers. So some things which you can control, some of like non-controllable are like foreign exchange rates or fuel price change. You really can't control these things. These are not in your hand. Whatever the market changes, these factors change. But on a controllable side, we have things like salaries or rent. If you want to cut down number of people, we want to create a shared services. We want to create a center of excellence for certain things. We want to change the complexity of our product. We want to change, there is impact on their BOMs, bill of materials. If you don't want to use a raw material which was earlier supplied by Malaysia, now for example, if you're manufacturing rubber or tires, we'll not take it from Malaysia, but we'll take it from Thailand if that is a cheaper option, or an alternate rubber which is available in the market, and it works, gives us better margins. So all those things can be decided, which are the variable drivers. So just an example of that. I'll show you some illustrations further down. So again, the same thing, some of the illustrations of what fixed drivers look like, lease, rental, and then these are broken down into rental area and rate. So if your lease rentals are going up, then you are able to clearly explain whether you took more area and started leasing an extra warehouse because you were producing more, or it's just the same area which you had in the past and it's just the rate has gone up of that warehouse, and you need to change your strategy to move to a cheaper warehouse, or relocate yourself or centralize yourself into a cheaper location. So all those decisions can be made. Yeah, again, same on the variable drivers, etc. I was just about to cover that. So from the labor side, if you have a lot of people shortages, or salaries have gone up, or you have hired more people because you're producing more, you are expanding. So those kind of decisions and information is able to you're able to get that and able to explain to the management so that they can take the right decision going forward. This is just an example of a revenue where you again look at the volume has grown, then you drill it down further, whether it was just a category growth of a product, or is it the market share which is growing. And if it's a share, then what is the base volume share or incremental volume share, etc. So it's just about drilling it down and knowing it more. Try to, when you look at the information about the company, try to go and get some more level of details. Looking at the P&L will give you at least a volume or a revenue. But if you know how that revenue is generally calculated in that industry, it will be easier for you to explain and talk through to the management or the leaders who are taking your interviews. Driver-based model, again, this is just an example of what I was talking about. Rubber for a tire manufacturing company, that your cogs are built of raw material, and then raw material is further can be broken down into further inputs, which is bills of material, rubber, carbon black, chemicals, and grade of rubber, whether it's what kind of rubber you're using, again, where we were talking about Malaysia, Thailand, and then what is further breakdown of that rate per unit into quantity per BOM. So if there is a variance coming into your profitability on the left side and EBITDA, you should be able to drill it down and to the lowest level and explain the management where exactly the problem is. Now you can see from left to right, we're going from the top to bottom. So what we are talking about here is that it's important to do a bottoms up budgeting exercise so that you have all this information captured, and wherever there is a need, you can go down to this level. And also, overwriting this materiality is an important part. I mean, if it's not material, there's no need to go down to this level in every case. but this is generally suggested, and you should focus on this and try to, for the key financial metrics, you should try to get this information before going into the interview. Rolling forecasts and revised forecasts, some of the differences. So as we were talking about fixed time forecast, you look at some options. So it's like the black part is your actual, whatever has happened, and the yellow part is what is yet to happen, is your forecasted part. So in the top chart, it's depicting that within the span of that year one, forecast update 1, 2, and 3, your timeline is still, the financial year remains the same. If it's 21, 22, you are in the first one, you are in the month of May, where you're saying April and May has been actual, and rest of the year is my forecasted number. And similarly, if you move up to the forecast update 2 and 3, you're moving up another 2 months, and another 2 months are added up on number 3. So this is, you're predicting about the same financial year, but it's a fixed forecast about that year. And then when you compare with the rolling forecast at the bottom, it's talking about every time you are moving, you are forecasting in every quarter per se. For example, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The entire yellow pieces, your 12 months is a forecasted figure all across till the bottom. So just giving you a heads up on, if you need to know this. From the reporting point, it's important to be able to, slice and dice and talk about multidimensionality. This is one of the important and latest techniques which most of the companies are applying. It's not about just having the revenue numbers or a P&L of entire organization or a business unit. It's more from a multidimensional profitability, or if we say brand level P&L or product level P&L, going down as deeper as possible and trying to allocate the cost, which are the fixed costs, for example, for your warehouse or rentals, etc., or some common costs which have to be allocated to a product. Like I was giving you an example of a supermarket where you're displaying a product. If you're paying some amount to the supermarket to display your product, whereas you are not paying anything to the supermarket, and they are very keen to keep that product because that product actually helps them sell other products. For example, if you come out towards the checkout, all the chewing gums and chocolates are kept near the till, which helps customers to just pick it up. Or some products which are very, very low profitability products, like selling milk, for example, not much profit in that. But if somebody wants to come and buy the milk, they will probably buy a butter and a bread as well, so which is of a higher profitability. So thinking on all those grounds and all those level of details, slicing and dicing of information and keeping that. So it's very important that you look at their product offerings and try to slice and dice so that you are able to go to a very detailed discussion with the stakeholders. Some key principles of performance reporting: you should focus on value drivers, scenarios, again, forward looking. There should be proper visualization of and depicted in terms of a graphs and charts. It should not be like a bunch of a report which is being presented, because numbers, we have seen a lot of clients where they have 2000 reports. It's just been a legacy, it's just been generated and it's been just kept there. So you don't want to prepare a book of reports with a lot of numbers, with no value added information, with which is not showing them trend analysis, or what is the competitor perspective, what is the new change you are bringing in, or what is an output coming out of whatever has happened, and what is the action you need to take. So it's more from a descriptive to a prescriptive approach where we need to move in. So you should be able to talk about all this, and you should have the knowledge on these areas. So a sample of a good dashboard, how it should look like. This is for one of the utilities company. You can see on the right side there's profit margin by various service offerings, whether it's nuclear, biomass, solar, coal, etc. And if you look at the left side, you are able to choose which area, which line of business, which state, or which customer you want to look at, and whether you want to compare it through the last year or you want to compare it through the current year budget or forecast. So all this graphical representation, something which will help the organization to make a decision, some valuable information. So if you see, there's always a comparator. You see 8.9% growth in the first one, and then 0.25% profit margin. And these kind of percentages are very important to compare that where you were before, whether you are 24.6% profit margin doesn't help the management to make a decision, but 0.25 less than previous year, definitely it makes the eyes go up and say, okay, it's less than last year. So what do we need to do? What's gone wrong, and what we need to improve? Okay, so yeah, that's what it is. And then just talking about a little bit on FP&A technology landscape. So these are quadrants. If you see on the right topmost quadrant, these are the leaders. Have some understanding about what is going well in the market. So Oracle is a leader in Hyperion, and Oracle are leader for your PBCS or planning budgeting softwares. Anaplan is another one, which is from a cloud-based tool. This is something where you need minimal interventions from IT, and things can be done by the finance professionals itself rather than dependency on the coders from IT department, etc. So that's why these kind of tools are gaining importance. So these are some of the leaders: IBM, Cognos, Adaptive, Insights, Oracle, Anaplan. Whereas there are others, SAPs, anyways, running towards that with its improvements in its BPC and other tools which they are launching. OneStream is another good one which you see on the right and bottom side. It's a visionary tool, again Board International, but they are now moving towards the leaders side. So good prospects for them. But it's good to know about these tools and talk about these tools and have an idea if you are interviewing for a FP&A role from a leadership perspective. Okay, some of the top FP&A skills which are required, which is expected from you if I'm a senior management manager or a CFO or a leader is interviewing you, that you need a very good attention to detail and understanding the things from a bigger picture perspective. As you look at, we talked about strategy and then linking the strategy to financial planning and analysis and how it's different from a typical finance organization. So that is a key skill which is being looked at, that if there is a small here and there in the number, it should be all on your top. That's the expectation. From a business decision perspective, any change you should be able to communicate in a very effective manner. Effective questioning skills is another important part, where if you're doing a zero-based budgeting or if you are doing your review of management accounts or budgets, you should be able to ask the right questions to the people who are submitting the budgets. For example, if you have multiple businesses or in India or outside India or globally, I mean, everything should, you should be able to communicate to them and ask them the right question. If you need X amount of investment, why? I mean, why you want to do the capex investment right now, and why not after 2 years down the line, or why we need to have so many people in the department instead of why can't we reduce them, or why can't we have the same? So yeah, so business acumen is important. You should be knowing the latest, what is happening. Again, looking at the macro environment, you should be knowing what is happening in the similar peer groups or outside the organization. Collaboration and teamwork is another important one, because you need to work with not only the finance people, you need to work beyond that. You will need to work with every department you can name, whether it's from sales, marketing, research and development, IT. You have to work with every department in a very efficient manner to ensure that you are able to present the right numbers to support the strategy of the business. So some behavioral skills: honesty, problem solving, patience, flexibility. You need a lot of patience in FP&A department, because you are waiting for the numbers to come in from various teams. Now these could be coming in very, very efficiently through a tech enabled environment, but a lot of companies are having the journey where they are moving towards the tech enablement, and they're still dependent on Excel to a certain level. And sometimes it does get really frustrating to wait for the numbers to come in the last moment, and when the numbers come in, they're not in the right format, or they're not adding up or not making sense. So you have to be very patient, show a huge amount of patience, and then try to have good relationship with all the teams and all that, and try to have standardized formats where you reduce these kind of problems and all that. Mentoring is another important aspect, that you have to build the right kind of team or right kind of analysis should be done, and they should be upskilled quite frequently, because FP&A is an area where you need to keep on upskilling the people. in a very short time. It's not like a typical finance function where you learn to do something and will continue that for next 5 years or few years at least. But in FP&A, your tools will change, the technology will change, the way you do the things will change, because it's working very closely with the business. As soon as the business changes, the FP&A will see a change. So yeah, some of these, and then we can move on.
Yeah, some of these are very important behavioral skills which you should inculcate into your question, answering your things. When we're looking for the interviews for FP&A, make sure you answer honestly. Don't fabricate answers. Whatever you've actually faced, just say that, because it's very likely the other person on the other end has faced the same thing. Problem solving, you always bring that mentality out in terms of actually trying to solve the problem rather than just bringing up the issue. What did you do to actually solve it? Communication, as you can see, is very important at leadership level. You've got to get the message out. Conflict happens, unfortunately, and you've got to resolve it. So examples around that is always great to bring forward. Negotiation is very big at every level, and especially at the leadership level, when everyone's got different priorities and trying to get things sorted. So we face that every day at work between Gagan and me as well. So and Gagan spoke about patience, mentoring, and to be elaborate. So just a couple of more slides. Normal FP&A questions where, Gagan's talked through most of this about the things. So what are rolling forecasts? What is budgeting, forecasting? What is the, multidimensional profitability? That's an amazing thing. You should know that. You should read about that before you go for any interviews. I've had the fortune of speaking to one of the partners in Gagan's team, Ankur Jain, who took me through something, and I was fascinated. And having moved from Australia, I'd never seen that there. So it was very, very interesting what the guys are doing in that aspect. So do read about it. So these are some questions around your leadership style. These questions you get asked. What is your leadership style? We sort of told you, try and be in the democratic thing. Don't say autocratic, please, unless you're going to interview for a Hitler job or something. Not ideal. Then, what are the qualities of a good leader? Explain your leadership style using the STAR technique. How do you solve for a challenging customer situation? Again, use your STAR technique to see that. How did you handle a conflict situation or manage the crucial conversations? What is your style in giving feedback and suggestions to your team? What is the approach to, motivating your team? What is your approach to manage deliverables? And there are a few other questions on the slide as you can read it. These are the sort of questions you will actually face. We ask them to our interviewers at a certain higher stage in their careers as well. So, okay. So, like Gagan said, I'd reiterate this. Understand the business. Don't go underprepared. Read about the financial statements. It's not only the financial statements. Read about the entire package, the news, what is out there, what do you know. Understand the business just doesn't come from the financials. It's more than that. So, see what is out there in the market. What are the analyst information or the analysts saying about a particular company? What are the projections, if it's listed, or other things in the press, or if you can get other stuff. It's basically, just be yourself and go prepared, I guess, is the main thing. Don't just be underprepared. Link your experience, what is your actual honest experience in handling situations. Focus on the I rather than the we. This is your chance to impress. And yeah, I think that's more or less what they're looking for. And, just to touch upon this in the end, I know we're just strapped for time a little bit, but as Gagan mentioned, an FP&A professional is not just a finance and accounting guy. He's no longer an accounting guy. He's been an accounting guy. He now needs to understand, if he's working for an organization, what is the strategy of my organization? So what do I do as a finance guy to help enable what is the vision and strategy of an organization the CEO and the CFO is trying to achieve? So you see, the FP&A professional of the modern era and day is a very broad guy. He's involved with corporate strategy. Well, this is what Gagan touched upon, corporate strategy. What is the strategy? What am I doing to get to that strategy? In the mergers and acquisitions field, do I buy a company? The FP&A professionals come and ask that by the CEO and the CFO. You get huddled into a room then, trying to analyze information, trying to give him that answer. So that comes through. What are the companies I need to look at to acquire? Then management consulting. Now, of course, that's a career in management. You see Gagan here. He's a stalwart in management consulting. He does FP&A consulting for various corporates, government, and other organizations day in, day out. He's teaching you also. So that's another career area. Of course, then, investor relations and private equity, your valuation modelers and the other things. And it's sort of linked to mergers and acquisitions as well. So PE funds are always, looking at people with strong financial skills who also have that FP&A mindset and skill. I think that's what differentiates people. And then just a quick through, I guess in a typical leadership role in a corporate or a industry body, you would look at least at like associate manager, middle level manager, and then leadership is the controller, the business partner, the team lead, the deputy CFO, and the CFO. As you go up, responsibilities increase, and the better you can explain data financial data in a way that it helps people make good business decisions, the successful professional you'll be. So that's it from us today. Any questions? So we have a couple. I mean, how do you register for the KPMG FP&A course? We're just doing this course in collaboration with Masters Union. So you've got to apply, you just shared that link. You just go in and you read about it and go through the application process. Yeah, Nirja, I'll take you let you take the other one, the time, but it's on the website, the fees of the course. Yeah.
Absolutely. The fees that is there for the program, feel free to take a tour of the website. But there are also scholarships that we are giving, especially to students who are applying in the first round. So do take a tour of the website to know more about these logistics, and feel free to interact with an admissions counselor as well. They'll be able to help you better whether the course will be an appropriate decision for you or not. Of course, I'm sure like this presentation also must have helped you out figure out the various professions and how you can tackle those interviews. So just feel free to make a call for yourself in that particular direction.
And I guess if you have questions, just give Masters Union a call. They've got a full team who are taking care of this. So they're extensively knowledgeable about the course and your career, where it can take your career, etc. So have a chat with them. So let me just try to, Gagan, do you want to go for the first question or? Yeah.
What I understand from here, Disha, that your work is on a financial reporting, but you're not in a strategic role, right? But you have been working on the reporting side anyways, and you understand what is the performance of the company you have been reporting for investors. If I understand correctly, then it's your P&L, balance sheets, etc. So as we were talking about, you have to focus more on the management side now. What is the need of the management? What is the expansion strategy, or what are the business objectives and vision? And then try to align yourself and ensure that what's happening around that in market, you have to read about those. So if you're, for example, if you're giving any interviews for a particular industry, then you should know that industry well. You should know what are the key parameters which are looked at in that industry and how the performance is measured and all that. And then these are like transferable skills. So it's not like you need to know finance to be an FP&A professional for sure, but you don't need to know strategy, to get into this role. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you know the finance well, if you know the numbers well, now it's you can fill up the gap by reading more about the business and understanding the business way. If you want to move internally within your business, then you need to know, you need to speak to certain departments like sales, marketing, and understand how the things are working there, and try to know all the entire company in and out, and try to know their products, try to know what's the vision, where they're going, where they're expanding, what are the new launches they're doing. And that's it. And while you enter the role, even if you start at a decent level, then you can continue to grow further, and you will learn on the go within the role.
So Disha, just to give you an example on that with my career back in the day. So I was seconded when I was with KPMG in Australia to a particular, there was a fraud in a large listed company. So I was actually seconded into a technical accounting manager sort of a role. So at that stage, what did I pick out of it? I was used to look at revenue contracts effectively, right? So what I got out of the technical accounting role, and I think you do in a simple performance, a financial sort of a role. That's what we're doing. In an accounting role, you learn about performance, about what is the contract, revenue accounting. So then what happens then is, the contract so well, then the CFO asks you, what happens with my contracts in the future? What do I do to improve my revenue recognition pattern? Those are the questions which you answer in a FP&A role, where you're trying to actually help the company push the P&L. So partner with the business to grow the business. So a person who's had that finance knowledge will be able to do it. It's like Gagan said, that skill is transferable. You know the contracts, you know what the revenue is, you know the accounting. Then you just work with the business to make sure you get the optimal value for the company. So that's a thing. Then the next question, after the completing the course, will my previous experience be counted? Absolutely. I think it will, because like Gagan and I we've been saying, your experience, hopefully it is a finance related experience, I think you're referring to, no raw person. That's why we're not even targeting people with very basic years of experience in this course for students as well. What we are saying is you've had to have a few years of finance experience. So if you have that, of course, it'll be counted. You'll be able to relate to the program then better. This course will open my job option for only KPMG. I'm pretty sure that's not the case at all. So Gagan, as an expert, all the slides he took you through, none of that is related to KPMG. Most of the time, that is him providing services to clients. And what happens in industry, in other things, there are a lot of jobs in the industry. GCCs have huge armies of people at various levels, looking for the people who analyze information now, rather than just specific accounting. Gagan, if you could take the next question. Yeah.
So, just adding there, Subhro. So, you're open for any industry. You talk about telecom, do you talk about, companies like Tata and others? Every sector you need in a professional. So you're not limited to the jobs with KPMG, but you're, open to apply to any of the industries. And the next question is on, can you switch easily in FP&A after working for 5 years in assurance? Yeah, absolutely. Because in assurance, I would imagine you would be anyways looking at statistics and statistical informations and all. So a lot of, what I have personally seen people moving to FP&A from various areas, people who have been working into underwriting of loans and insurance, etc. They have kind of also moved into FP&A. Sometimes there is a need of upskilling yourself. Then there are some accounting courses and finance courses available, which you can continue and do, and then upgrade yourself. But your experience is anyways valid. And then beyond that, as this course, maybe should you wish to join and know about FP&A and get an in and out information about how FP&A works and what happens in detail about every part of it, like capex budgeting or revenue budgeting or driver based budgeting and all. That's all you need to know, and to be able to perform well in the FP&A function.
I think US taxation, Indranil, is a different thing, but I guess it's a bit different, I think, from the core finance thing. It's very specific. I don't know, Gagan, do you have an answer for that? Like his experience is taxation.
So you have been in taxation, but it really depends what kind of work you're doing within taxation. And you can at any point choose to move into various departments, but it will only depend upon what is your relevant experience and how you can transfer that. The skills are transferable as far as you are having a finance background and you are preparing the tax reports, etc. You can convert that into an FP&A, but it depends how many years of experience and all that. And converting that into this role, probably you might start at a slightly lower level than what you would actually be at a taxation if you're moving from taxation to FP&A. But then it opens a lot of growth opportunities for you, and you might take a year extra. But then if you look at after a couple of years, you will be in a better position, if I may say, when you compare yourself. I mean, if you're only doing taxation, because this gives you visibility all across. So getting a job abroad, that's like, applying everywhere. If you have the right skills and right experience, then
Yeah, yeah. You also need to have residency and things in that country. So
right.
I guess, yeah, we are not. It'll definitely help you get a lot of what I'd just say is from a different perspective onto that. A lot of the jobs overseas are FP&A jobs. Traditional accounting jobs are are in overseas locations. And when I say overseas locations, I mean India, Philippines, etc., where shared service centers are there. A lot of the actual partnering jobs finance jobs remain in overseas locations. So of course, if you are certified in FP&A, it will give you an edge when you're actually looking at jobs in the market. But of course, it depends on other things. Does KPMG hire people from industry background in FP&A? I think we've got to look at your CV to understand what you bring to the table. So we of course do, but we'll have to see, what you bring to the table, etc. What is the difference between CA, CMA, and professional course like FP&A? This is our course is not a chartered. So I am a CA. Gagan is a CMA. So that has years of thorough professional training experience. We are not calling this a chartered management accountant or a chartered accountant. This is a CA doesn't really teach you FP&A too much, though. Let's just say it out loud. Most of the CAs go into accounting, so it gives you a skill beyond CA. But CMA, of course, you do study some of these modules in there. So if you're doing a CMA, I'm not sure this course is right for you. Is what I'm saying. So CA, yes, not an issue. You will get skills beyond CA in this for sure. General manager in FP&A role is possible in career growth by doing this course. Well, of course, like if you look at the curriculum and if you think that there are elements in there which you haven't covered in your professional life, and you need that to move within an organization, why not? We are looking for senior people in this course also. So yeah, I don't know, Gagan, do you have another view on that?
I think the question is about whether you can be a general manager in FP&A, if I'm reading it correctly, by doing this course. And if that is what it is, then definitely it will depend upon a lot of things, but this will give you an edge over by doing this course. You will understand what is FP&A. You will be able to work within FP&A that we can talk about, but then it will matter about how you progress it further. How do you establish yourself in the industry and move further? So there is no limit. Even linking it to global relocations, etc. So I've seen a lot of FP&A people who are working in India. They do globally relocate as well. So, but obviously after spending a couple of years, it should not be like you're joining somewhere and then you will be posted outside India or anywhere. That's not the case. But if you spend good 2 years, because you will be working generally in FP&A kind of a role, you're working with all the countries wherever the business is existing, and you're working very closely with them. So if you are doing a good job and if you have got the right skills over the period of time, and if you know the organization in and out, you will generally, the global companies give you an opportunity to move globally. That's their preference mode. It could be on secondment, it could be otherwise as well. But yeah, you need to get a good experience and move further from here after taking the course. Yeah.
So Nija, we are well past the thing, but we got a couple of other questions. So I'll just quickly answer them. So if someone wants to send their CV, you send it to Masters Union for sure. That's where you send them, because I think you can get the email address from there. And Prachi, you've got your hand up for a while. So to get more details about this course and interviews, where can I connect? So you can just look at the website, the link which Nirja posted. You will have all the details about the course, and the Masters Union team will take care of whatever questions you have. And if there are any specific questions which need further clarification, they do reach out to us. All right, Nirja, it's 8:10. It's way past my bedtime. So not. So maybe we wrap up for the evening.
Definitely. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Radha, for taking that extra time out to answer all the questions that were put across by all the learners who joined us. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Subhro. Thank you, Gagan, for your time this Friday evening. Learned a lot from this enriching session, and hope to see you both back again in the upcoming sessions and masterclasses.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.